Howdy, howdy, y'all. I have a guest with me today, and we're going to talk about The Prestige, which I have never seen. So, who am I here with?
My dude. Happy to be here. My name's Nick Zennick. I'm a co-host of the Vigilante 1939 podcast. It's a father-son best friend dynamic where we talk about all things DC, Marvel, Star Wars, and more. But more importantly, outside of comic book movies, I'm just somebody that loves film and the subjectivity and art that comes within making a film and talking about it. So I'm very happy to be here. Christopher Nolan's one of my favorite directors of all time. The Prestige is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I'm just very happy to be here talking about it with you.
The movie that we're talking about today is one of the Nolan movies. I think I initially lied to you. I think I said I watched this, and then I started watching this, and I was like, I did not watch this Nolan movie. I have no idea what I'm talking about. So, this was definitely, I think, I'm trying to think of all of Nolan's movies, but I think this is actually the one that I haven't seen, like the only one. I think I've seen the rest. And
Mm-hmm.
I have kind of a mixed relationship with Nolan movies. Like, I don't like Interstellar as much as other people really do. Um, I love Dunkirk. Uh, I I still like Inception and all of his other classics. I really dislike Tenet, honestly. But I mean, this movie felt completely different from all those movies. How did you feel about The Prestige? You said you liked it.
Yeah, so this is actually one of my favorite movies of all time, actually. And it's
Okay.
probably my favorite Nolan movie, like that he outside of a Batman movie that he's done. To me, it is probably his most underrated movie, just because I feel like it is one of those movies that, because it came out in like the early mid 2000s, it kind of doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Because I think the most Nolan movie that everybody kind of tends to go to, besides like The Dark Knight, is Inception, which is fair. I mean, that's a great movie in itself, but I feel like The Prestige is just one of those underrated gems that I think if you're a diehard film fan, you kind of discover later on. I feel like.
Yeah, I was shocked to see that this came out 1 year after Batman Begins, because like I just initially thought it was kind of like right before Batman Begins, but
Mm-hmm.
it was so soon right after, like, just a huge blockbuster Hollywood type movie. And like I know this movie has like a crap ton of actors and actresses, and it like feels small scale even though it probably isn't in terms of budget. I don't know exactly what the exact budget was, but it's got all the name value, and I really do love this movie. I don't know where I'd rank it with my other Nolan movies, but I think I'd
Mm-hmm.
probably at least put it in the top three, probably
Mm-hmm.
top two, honestly.
Yeah, it's so good, and you even like look at the cast too. I mean, like top to bottom, I feel like this cast, like it's an A-list like ensemble to me. I mean, Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Hugh Jackman, ScarJo, Rebecca Hall, Andy Serkis. I mean, it's that's an ensemble, man. So
Yeah,
I
it's
was I was just into it. Yeah, floored from every acting performance to the last.
yeah, that was my biggest takeaway from this movie was it just felt like such a powerhouse of performances. Like I really can't tell you a performance I disliked and wasn't amazed by either. Like I really liked all the feminine leads too. Like I thought their characters were written really well too, and they were just like so powerful. It's nice to see like actual like good love interests that are written well. Like I love Rebecca
Mm,
Hall in this movie, and I think Scarlett Johansson's really like the only like non-British actor in this movie, and she pulls off the
mm,
accent pretty well too.
mm. Yeah, they do. They both really play the love interest. I think pretty great, and especially like when you get into a little bit of the story, like how different and similar they are too. I think was really crazy.
Hmm. Yeah, I like how this movie is just like at first it's just kind of like a lot of like journal reading and stuff, and like at
Mm,
first I was like, wow, this does feel like this movie was definitely like a book. Like you could tell without knowing, like, because I knew before it was based off of a book, which I heard has a
mm-hmm,
very different ending than this movie, but a lot of it is just them reading these journals.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think like the hook for me, especially like the more we watch it, is I am somebody that's like fascinated by like magic and illusion and the idea of deception and like manipulation because this whole movie is just about two guys just trying to one up each other. You know, essentially
Yeah.
what it is one of them trying to pull off the greatest magic trick like of all time, and one of them does, then the other just tries to do it better. Like that's what the movie is, and you're getting two. quality actors on the top of their game at the time in Bale and Jackman just doing their thing. So it's, everything is so intricate about the plot and every twist and turn just had me like there wasn't a second in the movie where I wasn't into it. It takes a while to get going, but like when it gets going, it like gets going.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like this movie flew by me. I think it's like a little over 2 hours, but like
Yeah.
you're definitely right where it's constantly just throwing you like these twists, and there's a lot of really unique twists. I kind of saw the Bale twist coming just because like the way that they shot the other guy. Because I had no idea
Yep.
about this movie coming into it, but I kind of saw something else coming, even though I do think it still follows that trifecta that they talk about at the beginning, like the pledge turn and the prestige. And that's another thing I like about
Mm-hmm.
this movie a lot is it actually does like a lot of scenes follow those three steps, and then the movie you could argue overall follows those three steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you on the Bale twist too because you make an interesting point too, like the way the character is shot the whole movie. You kind of think like, oh, maybe he does look like Christian Bale in disguise, or maybe this is just something else entirely that like
Mm-hmm.
Nolan has up its sleeve in at the end of the third act. Because you probably know as well as I do, he's really known to give you like that just mind blowing ending to his movie that like you think you see coming, but then it kind of just
Oh,
throws you for a loop. And this one was like four mind blowing endings in
oh
the
yeah,
span of like 10 minutes for me. Like
yeah.
when you look at like Bale's ending and then Jackman's ending and then like there's another ending after that. It's crazy
I
like how
yeah
we pull that off.
I specifically love that last shot. Like it was like it's really like sudden cut to black too. Like I had to rewind and see it. I was like, wait, what did I just see?
Yeah.
Like him sitting in the tank, and I'm like, oh geez, man, this is screwed up.
Hmm.
At first, I like
Oh.
really wasn't like falling in love with like how it was edited because like the way that it was layered, I knew it's like some certain formula that this happened a lot in the 2000s where they would show you like near the end of the movie and then it shows you like layered throughout how we got there. And at first I really wasn't on board with that just because I've seen it a million times, but I think this movie does pull it off at I'm trying to remember there's a specific part where it really hit me and I think it was one of the tricks that was a screw up. Then I started to realize like okay, this is working for me.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's see here's like the tricky part for me is it's you don't really know if like the mistake was intentional or not because Bale is so convincing that like he probably like you don't know if he knew that he screwed up or not, and you don't know if he intentionally messed up the trick or not, like to try to
Mm.
kill the other guy's wife. Because I don't think that was his intention, but because like magicians are so good at being like massive manipulators, and Bale is just so good at like in the whole movie at just playing it like so close to the vest that it's a twist that you don't know if the twist was actually intentional within the characters at least. But it's when it happens, and then he almost gets away with it, and actually he kind of does get away with it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was with you because it changes the whole scope of the movie. Whereas like before, they wanted each other's secrets to the trick, and then it like became this revenge story, and
Mm.
then it became like the other guy just wants to destroy the other guy's life,
Yeah.
essentially.
I like the dichotomy of these like two characters too, where like you have the one that's like he's willing to get his hands dirty, and the other one's like, well, I'm trying to like steal his trick, but I'm at least trying to do it like the right way, I guess you could say. Because like there's that one scene with like the
Mm-hmm.
Chinese magician where it's like the two characters staring at him, and they see him like faking being like handicapped, where he's like walking really slow, and Christian
Mm-hmm.
Bale's character is like, "Wow, I can't believe he would do all that. That's so like cool of him." And Hugh Jackman's character is like, "Oh my god, that's so awful." Like he scoffs at the idea, and because this also loops back, I like how like this happens pretty early in the movie, but later on in the movie when you realize that Christian Bale has a twin, and then freaking
Mm-hmm.
Hugh Jackman has to get David Bowie to make him a machine to clone him. You start to realize like, oh, so this was consistent throughout the entire movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know how you felt about it too, but I love the whole mysticism of is it a clone? Is it a double? Is it
Mm-hmm.
somebody's twin brother? Like I think like the whole thing is was just fascinating to me because like you weren't you weren't sure if Jackman was the one that had the twin or the clone or the double. You weren't sure if Bale had it, and then you weren't sure if Bale just pulled like the greatest illusion of all time, and you realize that he just was constantly like flipping with his double, so it just made it seem like he was always one step ahead of Jackman the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, like on paper, this movie should be like super convoluted and super confusing. But I feel like on my first
Yep.
watch, I got essentially everything, even with just like thinking
Mm-hmm.
back after I watched it, and kind of realized just like how masterfully laid out everything was. Like, because this on paper should be a really confusing movie. There's doubles, there's clones. Like, there's no way this should be this fun of a watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and honestly, I think it all comes down to this was how I would describe it. It's like Nolan at his peak before he hits his peak, where it's you look at what he did before, right? Like he did Memento, he did
Mm-hmm.
Insomnia, and he did Batman Begins. So those are like his three heavy hitters. Before he did The Prestige. So he wasn't at his filmmaking where you need like a PhD in order to almost understand his movies now. Whereas this one, I think if you're just locked into it and you're just sitting down, like phones maybe a few inches or feet away from you, nothing else is going on, and you're just solely focused on watching the movie, I think you can get it. Like I don't think it's that hard of a movie to understand, but it is kind of confusing, but it's not to the point where you feel like you're having like an aneurysm watching it or something.
Yeah. Yeah, like I feel like this is at least so much fun of a watch and so easy of a watch that like I could just sit down with my parents, be like, "Hey, you want to watch this prestige movie? It's got Hugh Jackman in it and, Christian Bale." Be like, "Oh, that sounds good." And they'll watch it and I feel
Yep.
like they would actually be like pretty encompassed by the movie. Like this is just a super fun watch. I can't imagine how this like adds or how the rewatches are on for this movie because I just imagine it staying as fun every time.
Mm. Oh yeah, and honestly, like it was one of those. I actually, so I have it on Blu-ray,
Okay.
and it looks spectacular on Blu-ray, and I'd imagine 4K as well. But I didn't even know I had it on Blu-ray too. So it was like one of those movies that like I guess I bought like or my parents might have bought, and I just didn't know I had it, and I'm almost like glad I had it because like I do have most of his like filmography collected on physical media, and I was like, wait, do I have the Prestige? And I'm like glad that I did because it is like you said, it's such like an accessible, just fun movie that you can just pop on
Yeah,
at
just
any
pop
time.
it on. Yeah. I
Yeah.
I just I think the first scene that got me into this movie was like the attempt with the gun where he starts to try to catch the
Yeah.
bullet. And once you start realizing like the sabotage that's like possible here, you kind of realize how this movie's going to be where you're like, wow, this is like in this setting, this is like uniquely dangerous like all the stuff they're doing.
hmm Yeah, and that's it's he really did go for like a lot of the theatrics in the movie. It's I don't like I said, I've always been fascinated with magic, but I don't know like what the extent of like magicians really will go. So I think the movie does a good job at explaining the obsession that goes within magicians because that is I think pretty accurate. Like a lot of magicians are very articulate with detail and they got to be two steps ahead of the
Hmm.
audience and themselves because even if the trick is remotely obvious, it's done, right? So I think the movie does a good job of just explaining and showing you like all that goes into like the theatrics of a magic trick. And I think that's the fascinating part to me.
Yeah, I mean, the only like research I really did before I did watch this movie was I just saw like a fun fact, I guess you could say, for this movie, and it showed you like the history of that Chinese magician, because like it's based on a real life guy, and the real life guy is American, but he fakes being Chinese to like
Mm,
add to like his show. They're like, oh well, like it will be more like if it's foreign, it's like a lot more people are gonna want to see it. So he apparently never spoke English in public besides his last words when he got shot. He said, "Oh, I've been shot," in English. That was the only way
mm,
they found out that he was lying the whole time, I guess. And
mm,
I think that like that's such a crazy detail when you look that up, and then you're like, wow, that kind of actually like intertwines with this movie because it shows
Mm,
you the extent they're willing to go just to be like a successful performer.
yep. Yeah, and of course, the whole motto of the movie was, what Christian Bale says a few times, like, "Are you watching closely?" Right? That's like the overarching line of the movie, and it's intense the first time you hear it, and then it's even more intense the last time you hear it, because that was the whole thing in front of you, especially that thing with the rubber ball. It's like you knew like when that rubber ball comes out, like something intense was probably gonna happen, and that's such a Nolan thing too, where he teases you. He like throws in one line in like the beginning of the movie, and he somehow always finds a way to tie it back in the end. And that to me is what always intrigues me about his filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, that was what I think the very first line of the film was like
Yep.
with all those hats and everything. It was just like, watch closely. And I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
well, I know who this guy is. I know everything is said for a reason, especially if you're just going to like quickly cut away. Um, yeah, I mean, as long as you're like able to dig your heels into like the fact that they literally made a machine that can duplicate people, this is such a fun movie.
Hmm.
Like, I'm really glad
Yeah.
it actually went there too, because like when I first like saw the like electrical like currents and stuff coming out, I was like, oh geez, how fictiony are we gonna get with this movie? And I really loved
Mm-hmm.
how deep we really went. And I don't think the special
Mm-hmm.
effects really aged that poorly. I think it looked about 2006.
Yeah, yeah, it looks pretty practical, and especially like when Christopher Nolan, he typically tries to go as practical as possible, which I really really respect, especially like in today's
Yeah, especially in
filmmaking
Tenet.
in society. Yeah, it looks great. I mean, the movie, like the cinematography, looks really good. The movie scored really good to me, in my opinion. So yeah, it fits your like mid 2000s movie that I think can still hold up today.
Yeah, music is a huge part for movies for me, and I really did like the score. They like the
Yep.
only like I have like only really slight problems with this movie, and they're always so tiny. I thought the way that the last like one of the last scenes was handled, like when he shoots Hugh Jackman's character. I think that's kind of a corny scene, just because like he shoots them, and then Hugh Jackman gets this like huge like monologue before he
Yeah.
dies. Like it's such a small problem because it could simply just be handled by him like holding the gun at him instead, letting him talk,
Mhm.
and then like whenever you want him to stop talking, shoot him. But I thought it was kind of corny, but it's not like I took off a point off the score or anything for it.
No, and you know what? That I'm actually glad that you really brought that up, because that's actually a nitpick that I have, more so in movies now, where it's like the believability of it all is starting to kind of irritate me. Where it's like this guy clearly gets gutted like in the stomach, like with like a kitchen knife or even something sharper. Somebody gets shot and he gets to go on like this monologue, like you just said. I'm like, I know it's a movie and I know we're supposed to suspend like disbelief
Hmm.
for certain things, but I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, like even like if you don't get shot like near an artery or a vein, if we're really gonna get technical about it, you're still gonna like be gone in like a few seconds.
Yeah.
Like that's not something that I don't think is really believable. But you know what? I guess we can go with it.
Yeah, I'm sure if I got shot, I'd be just like speechless.
Yeah,
I don't think I'd have
yeah.
many words coming out of myself. Just,
I'm sure you
definitely
would be
not a
giving an
prepared
Oscar
monologue.
winning performance.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, there's a bunch of little details I really like too. How like there's that prison trick where he locks the guard, and
No.
it perfectly does the pledge turn of prestige. Like I don't know why I was so fascinated with like those three lines, because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch every scene in this movie and wait for that turn and then wait for that prestige. And like it kind of
Hmm.
like got me excited for every scene.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, Nolan Bale was. I think this is one of Bale's greatest
Mm.
performances, actually. And especially him writing off of, I mean, the American Psycho, The Machinist, Batman Begins. He he really like went for it in this movie. And I think it was a different performance for him even at the time. Because I think he did a lot by that point. but that was something that you can tell he really engrossed himself into that role. I feel like.
Yeah, I expect that from Bale at this point. So I really did love his performance. I thought Hugh Jackman's range in this movie was absurd because like again, this is 2006. He wasn't like quite an established name yet. He was still like more of a Broadway dude, but he's still,
Wolverine,
he's
yeah.
been in a bunch of movies since then, and we all know he's great
Hmm.
now. But yeah, just the range from both of them's crazy. They have to play like, especially Hugh Jackman when he gets like the drunk copy of him, because
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite things in movies is when people actually can drunk act well. It's really cringy when you see people drunk act and it looks so stupid.
Hmm.
With Bale's like it
Yeah.
was definitely a lot more nuanced because like his you don't even know about the doubles throughout the entire movie. But I really do love some of his nuance.
Mm. Yeah, and that's so crazy too. Like when you go to look back at like a lot of Nolan's cast, like I think this was the only time that Jackman's ever worked with Christopher Nolan, and I'm almost a little bit shocked about that because you would think that he'd be somebody that Nolan would want to bring back at least for a few more times. So I'm a little shocked that that was his only turnaround, especially I think ScarJo and Rebecca Hall have also never worked with Christopher Nolan since
Mm-hmm.
then. So I think Bale, I think, has the record along with maybe Cillian Murphy. But that I always find it interesting.
Yeah, I mean Hugh Jackman's kind of like that. If it feels like with his filmography at this point, like he's worked with Denis once, he's worked with
Yeah,
Darren Aronofsky once, he's worked with Nolan once. Like I'm not sure if this is like an overarching pattern. It's not like I just looked at his filmography, but like
yeah,
it seems like he just likes to go all over the place. I know he still does Broadway. I guess that's where his heart
yeah,
is, but he's a damn good actor.
yeah. Good for him.
Yeah. Well, my friends and I are like our roommates. We did like an X-Men binge where we watched all of the X-Men a few weeks ago,
Oh, yeah,
and it was a lot of fun. But like when we got to Logan at the end, you're like, damn, Hugh Jackman's just like really good.
yeah. And it's one of those like it's crazy because the movie came out in 2000, but I mean I think they had to have filmed it in like 1999, so or around there, maybe even early 2000. They filmed it and put it out. So yeah, he was Wolverine for like a good 17 years, I want to say, whenever Logan came out, 17, 18 years.
hmm
So that's a long time even for anybody.
Do you know if there's like any history about like why David Bowie got casted as Tesla?
I
Like
don't but it was a good
he was
call. You know,
great
it
as
was good.
Tesla.
He
I
was
was just
great,
so
yeah.
confused, but I was like, who is that? And I just like looked at my screen a little harder. I'm like, why is David Bowie on my screen in this movie?
Not something that I would have thought Nolan would have went for, but good for him.
Yeah, he kills the accent too. Honestly, I love his like. He's pretty much he is just a mad scientist. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had a lot of fun with this movie. Um, I've had it like kind of on my like back burner of like, yeah, I definitely need to catch up with that movie. There's a lot of big time directors that like have movies in the early 2000s that I need to catch up on.
Mm. Oh yeah, 100%. Like I said, and to be honest with you, I think I caught this movie at the best time. Like I've been watching movies like my whole life, and I try to do a good job at going through all the heavy hitters in Hollywood, but I think this was one of them. Like it came out in 2006. I'm pretty sure I watched it the year it came out. I don't think I saw it in theaters. But I think it's one of those like if you catch it at the right time, it kind of just sits with you. Whereas like if you kind of watch it over time, I think it still might be a great movie to you. But I think it's the feel of watching something. I think
Mm,
when it comes out, and if you really really like it, it kind of just sits with you for the longest time, which I think is why I've always called it like an underrated masterpiece to me.
yeah,
Is because the plot of it all was so mind blowing at its time. It's like it's Nolan at like the top of his game, coming off of Batman Begins and all his other films. So it was like the perfect storm movie for me.
yeah. I mean, I can't imagine watching this movie in like a packed theater because I mean, with all the twists and turns in this movie, like I'm
Yeah.
expecting like Spider-Man reactions, man. Like this is just such like I've got a bad idea to watch this, but like for the most part, when I watch movies, I'm very director based. Where
Yep.
when I think about movies that I want to see in a year, it's not like oh, this has got Jake Gyllenhaal in it. I'll go watch it. Like I'm more like, oh, this director, oh, Chazelle's coming out with the movie this year. I gotta go see that and stuff like that. So like when it comes to Nolan,
Mm,
like I think I probably did it when I was like 16 or 18 or something. I was just like, all right, I gotta watch all of his movies. So I just would probably sit
mm-hmm.
on my laptop or something and just pull them all up, just how he intended for me to watch them.
Yeah. In what is your favorite Christopher Nolan movie, by the way, if you don't mind me asking? Do
Yeah,
you have one?
this would probably be too. The poorly aged answer that I used to go by was Memento. I used to really like
Okay.
Memento. I
That's a
don't
great
know.
movie, though.
Like I think I
Yeah.
would have to go with like the basic ass answer of Inception probably still. I
Yeah.
I really like Dunkirk, but like it would be hard to call that my favorite Nolan movie. Um
Sure.
yeah, I definitely it's not Tenet.
Yeah,
um
I saw that one in the theater, and I was like one of four people in the theater that saw it. But
I was about to say I was
that's
like, man, you got it in a theater? That's crazy.
yeah, I did, cause me and my buddy like went cause when I think it came out in August or September, but it was still you were allowed to leave the house at that time, so if you felt safe enough to go, you can still go. But there were a lot of restrictions at the time too, so I don't think people were quite ready to still pack theaters at that time. But I'm glad that I got the experience, in a theater for that one, because it's not like you, it's not my favorite Nolan movie, but it is a pure spectacle
Yeah, definitely a
movie,
spectacle movie that I
yeah.
wish I had subtitles for.
Yes.
I God, that was
With that
brutal.
movie, yes.
That was brutal. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd probably put like Inception and like Dark Knight probably. I just
Yeah.
rewatched all those Batman movies because I didn't remember seeing Batman Begins at all. Maybe I didn't even see it growing up as a kid or something. But probably like Inception and Dark Knight. Not Interstellar. Even though like if I was rating it based on just like its looks, I'd probably give it like a 10 out of 10, just perfect. But
Oh, sure, yeah.
a lot of themes just don't hit with me. I don't like the love conquers all.
Man, you want to talk about like needing a PhD to like understand a
Oh
movie,
yeah.
like that's the one. I mean, like I'm so into like the first two thirds of Interstellar, and then like when the third act comes along, I'm just like, did he just make a different movie?
Yeah.
Like in the last like 40 minutes, I'm like, come on,
It's
man.
like he wanted to make a movie specifically only
Yeah.
for Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I'm like, I'm pretty sure Nolan just invented a new terminology in that movie.
Yeah, his own language and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's. I don't know if I'll ever do like a Nolan ranking video because I do like talking about directors and I like how
Yeah.
directors have their like unique stamps on movies. Where like he's definitely one of those directors where when I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, this is definitely a Nolan movie. This is like a Nolanism or something like that. But yeah, I'm looking at his filmography now, and I forgot I haven't seen Insomnia either. So that's one I definitely
Ooh,
need to hit
yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, that was another like really solid one. I think Al Pacino's in that one. Hilary Swank's in it. Robin Williams is in it. So if you're a Robin Williams fan, he's pretty great in that movie too. So yeah, I think that one's another one he's pretty well known for, I would say.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna get to it. But yeah, I'm pretty glad you when you said Prestige in the messages, I was like, you know what, that's the one. I need to see this one. I'm really glad you recommended it because I had to get this under the watch category.
Yeah, and what better time to go through all his movies now while he's in while he's ensembling, I guess if that's even a word.
Yeah,
The greatest cast of all
he's a
time
yeah,
apparently
just
for
any
his next
Hollywood
movie.
actor ever. Yeah, yeah. I don't know
Like
why.
literally, like I don't think there's ever been a more stacked cast than the movie he's making
There's
now.
got to be like 40 like A-listers, like not even B-listers, just straight A-listers on this movie.
I'm like, damn. I was like, Universal must have all this money that they apparently haven't been using that they could just
Yeah,
Get all these people in the
There's
movie.
they just have like a vault reserved for like Nolan. They're like, oh, he wants to make a movie. I dig the money out. Dig the money out.
Oh, Warner Brothers doesn't want no one anymore. Okay, we'll take him. Open up the vault.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it's like the last few weeks, I think like after like Oscar Madness, where like I'm watching all the Oscar movies, and like at one point I just was like, okay, I'm gonna go rewatch some or just watch some old 2000 movies that I need to see. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know why I've just been living in like the 2002s through 2007s in the last like 3 weeks. But
Mm.
this is definitely the best of the movies I've seen besides Adaptation, which I just watched.
Oh yeah, no, I'm completely with you. Like just to go off your point, I mean, I haven't seen every Quentin Tarantino movie, and I actually just watched Jackie Brown and Reservoir Dogs for the first time like last week. So you're not alone on that one. I think right now it's like a good time to go backwards as opposed to
Yeah.
staying forward right now. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, as a movie watcher, you need like 2 months out of the year to just go watch movies that you haven't put on. Like oh, if you haven't watched Casablanca or something, like they're like, okay, I need to do this before people start to figure it out.
Right. Yep.
Sweet. Well, I guess I'll call it there. That sounds like a pretty good conversation. I will take it.
Yeah, dude. Damn. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. This was a great time. I've never talked about this movie before. I don't think and I host a comic book movie podcast. So talking about movies that aren't
Oh, nice.
comic book movie related is something that I always get a kick out of. So
Nice.
truly thank you for the conversation.
Yeah, I like taking you out your comfort zone, I guess.
You
Either.
are, you are, you are. I enjoy my comic book movie fix, but I'm a diehard just movie fan at heart. So anything doesn't have to be related to superheroes. I just love movies. So this was
Awesome.
this was a great time.
Yeah, it was a great time too. Alrighty.